This is CXO Secrets, the podcast that takes you inside the mind of business leaders and reveals the strategies behind their success. Coming up in today's show...
I think humans are, we're creative. We still have an edge over the machines in terms of, our future direction. What do we need to do? What issues do we need to address, as a population, as humanity? Computers, fantastic number crunchers, but they need direction. So I think humans can be sort of the orchestrator. I don't think AI is sort of in a position to take over that role at any time in the near future. We can be the orchestrator, the director, and then let the machine do what it's good at, which is number crunching, which is running through scenarios to achieve a set target. It's applicable to all fields, to be honest.
The CXO Secrets podcast is powered by EDS, going beyond connections. Find out about upcoming C-level events, experiences and insights at edsxevents.com. Wendy Ng, Business Information Security Officer at Marks & Spencer. Thank you for joining us here.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Now, Business Information Security Officer, BISO for short. Just tell us a bit about what that means for you, what your responsibilities as a BISO are there at M&S.
So a BISO is, I suppose, what you would call a fractional CISO. So obviously the CISO has a set of responsibilities. And for an organization such as the size of M&S, there's lots of departments, lots of engagements. And sometimes it's difficult for the CISO to be engaged and be hands-on with all of these engagements. So typically for lots of large organizations, they divide that role for alignment to specific business areas, so that we can sort of get more visibility of engagement, sort of see what folks are doing on the ground, as it were, and give them a bit more time to work with the technical team and to work with the business side to make sure that we have a solution that is cost effective, doing the right thing for the customer, doing the right thing for the stakeholders, doing the right thing for the shareholders. Security is not black and white. So there's always some trade-off you have to do. You do one thing and you might not be able to sort of do something else. Or if you do a particular action, then there are specific consequences. So it is just providing that visibility, and the BISO role is key in more kind of specific analysis of the different business areas.
Yeah, and I know we can't go too much into the detail of the specific programs you're involved in at M&S, but what can you tell us about the scale of the operation at M&S?
So M&S is a very established retailer. I think the last revenue numbers, we got about 13 billion. So that's a pretty sizable organization. Yeah. It is, as you say, a retailer. So retailers are incredibly competitive because profit margins are so thin. So it is in the interest of retailers to leverage technology. We've seen it from some of our competitors, Tesco's, Amazon. You have to use technology, you have to use tools to basically keep the competitiveness and, maintain profit margins. Also, because of the environment, retailers tend to also be a bit more, I don't want to say take more risks, but I think the risk appetite is probably different to some of the other industries, just because to maintain competitiveness and to sort of remain in business, they have to take those activities. So if you look at sort of the history of retail, a lot of the sort of innovation, at least applied innovation, has been from retailers, from the retail business, and that kind of filters through to sort of the more risk averse.
Yeah. And I guess retail is certainly in the UK an altogether different picture with regards to being a regulated industry in comparison to biotech to pharma to financial services, for example. And like you say, with the margins at which retail as a whole operates, you need to try and find those competitive advantages, those marginal gains, I guess. But because you do them at such scale, finding those can still be very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Are there any examples of the kind of innovation? I'm going to throw one out there, and it's one we mentioned when we spoke when we weren't recording a little while ago. But with some retail technology platforms, for example, the likes of Ocado and the automated warehousing that they do is absolutely incredible. The OTP, I think they used to call it, the Ocado Technology Platform. Innovation like that must be a really, really exciting area. Yet also, from an information security point of view, well, I guess it's still exciting because you love your job. Therefore, seeing an area of innovation like this and going, right, how on earth do I manage this? How on earth do I understand the risks, and then try to manage those risks as we bring those technologies, those innovations into the business?
So So Ocado is actually we're sort of part owners of Ocado.
I thought it was safe territory, which is why I was happy to mention them.
Thank you. So they build a whole platform. I mean, they are very much a technology led company. They build the platform from the ground up, right? So they made huge investment into robotics, automation, in terms of order fulfilling. I think it's a credibility to the investors for them to sort of hold out and say, look, we have to make this investment. So, in terms of your ROI, it's going to take a bit longer to get, but they got there. For most other organizations in the sort of retail space, I think it's, especially if you're sort of more established names, there's already a history of like different platforms, right? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to sort of enable some of these innovative technologies, which the industry absolutely needs, to make sure that you are competitive and a viable business going forward. So it is sort of looking at how we can implement those technologies at a risk level that's acceptable to the board, to the stakeholders, to the investors, and to the customers. I should say probably to the customers in the first instance, right? So it very much is a juggling act, and because of that, and that's, I think, because of those type of activities, and that's why the sort of business information security officer role, which is a relatively newer term, comes into existence, because it's not straightforward. You can't just strip out the whole organization's operations. You need to say, this is what we're working with. How can we build innovation on top of that? And the productivity gains from automation, from AI, from robotics. I mean, I think this is a pivotal year for that. We can't actually be left out the race, because I think it's going to put an organization to a significant disadvantage if we don't engage. There's no choice, basically.
I agree. 2025 it's feeling like a pivotal year when we're reaching a level of, from an engineering point of view, with robots, with physical automation, if you like, in industry, in factories, in retail environments, but then also from the software side as well. I guess this embodied AI, as you might call AI robots, everything seems to be coming together, and we're seeing pockets, mass innovation in other parts of the world, whether that's in the US or in China, or collaboration between East and West to bring the engineering excellence and the AI excellence together. It's going to be fascinating in 2025. I quite agree.
Absolutely. And AI is a sort of passion of mine, because I partly transitioned to cybersecurity because I had a very kind of analytical, and I did do machine learning, a decade and a half, 2 decades ago. And it's so exciting to me because I did a project on using machine learning to identify protein crystals. I mean, this was like 15 years ago, so like a long, long time ago, for downstream experiments. And, I can see the potential from it. And it's now literally 15 years later that we're seeing this out in the open to sort of the consumer market and sort of literally help everybody. So it is, for personally, it's a very, very exciting time for me. And I think we can do so much good. You know, there's lots of debate on, how we can use it, how can we protect consumers, how can we protect stakeholders. But I just think there's so much good potential coming from it. And, if we're able to collaborate as a world, as a human civilization, I think, the potential is boundless.
Sadly, this is not a geopolitics podcast. Otherwise, I think there'll be a lot to talk about there. But what I do want
we can chop that bit off.
No. I think that all of these different perspectives on this conversation with regards to collaboration, I think as we try and use these technologies for good, for the overall human good. However, there are various challenges as a human race, frankly, and as various societies within that, to making that happen for the good of everyone. But the bit that I do want to focus on, and you alluded to it there, is your background. And because many of the guests that we speak to here on CXO Secrets, you're similar to them in as much as your career journey where you are now as a BISO at M&S, it doesn't necessarily reflect where you began, because your undergraduate degree from UCL was in genetics. Your master's from York was in computational biology. You have a doctorate from Oxford in medical genetics, specifically genetic polymorphism in the control of alternative splicing. So I have to ask, Wendy, as you were embarking on your higher education journey, what was the career path that you were intending, you were preparing yourself for?
So, truth be told, I think as a teenager, I seem to have had an affinity for genetics. Right, I sort of it's a very it's a very conceptual subject. So if you understood the concepts, it was an easiest path for me. So I was sort of going along the path of least resistance. And I actually did a PhD before I did the masters. I went into a sort of very analytical field. I used sort of statistical models for my undergraduate program, and I've sort of wanted to move into that direction. Unfortunately, I do have very sensitive skin, so it's I couldn't really stay in the wet lab. So that's why I did a master. I pivoted to do a master's with the intention of going to bioinformatics, which is basically using computers and machines to look at data from biological experiment to decipher insights from it. So I sort of went into a sort of more geeky kind of direction. It's like I'm a geek. I can just about talk to people. So, what should I do? Technical consulting.
You do that very well.
Thank you. Technical consulting. And so I went into Cisco, and then I realized, hang on, all these systems are designed with connectivity in mind. Nothing is secured. And then I saw a lot of, from the security point of view, a lot of analogy with some of the statistical machine learning topics I did back at uni. So I've sort of purposefully pivoted.
Yes, because it strikes me, given your stepping away from the laboratory, like you say, out of need, but still having a real affinity with data and looking at large data sets and using machine learning models to derive insights from those. As we look back 10 or 15 years ago, sort of that time frame, the sexiest job title in IT was data scientist. Boy, companies were paying a lot of money for anyone who could conceivably, credibly call themselves a data scientist. But that wasn't the route that you went down then. You, Cisco, EY, PwC, Deloitte, all of those, you seem to be going down more of a connecting the dots rather than analyzing the dots, and then looking at where those joins were between the dots, what the vulnerabilities, what the potential vulnerabilities were. What was it that didn't take you down the data science route? And what was it that attracted you towards that security, that information security, network security piece?
So I think purely is probably a bit of an accident. I didn't go down the analytics route, but honestly, just looking back, it was probably a kind of better direction for me because I do like to connect people, to be the connector. I do want to sort of, instead of being a specialist in a specific area, how can we take this knowledge and combine them and make practical use? So I think I like to think I'm a fairly pragmatic person, and I would like to see okay, we have this concept, how can we use it? And when I was in research, the lead time, I think, between sort of concept to actualization is so long.
Yeah.
I think I would have been possibly a bit frustrated by that. So I'm still very passionate about, biology, medical sciences. But I think the analytics background, the exposure to machine learning, and for the analysis, we were using open source. I mean, we were using open source libraries in R, but we were using, open source analytics. I could see the potential that has, but maybe it's for, I'm more of a connector, as you say, rather than the person who's sort of there doing the grind. Which I take my hats off to them. They're much smarter than I am. And I think there comes to a time where you realize you're sort of, there's limitations that other people could, do things better.
It's also all about identifying your strengths there and what it is that you do have to offer, and that's that verve to apply your knowledge and to bring different things together and see how that can create something that's more the sum of its parts when it's applied to the real world, I think is incredibly valuable. And we talk a lot about the human side of cybersecurity, don't we? About how hacking hardware and how hacking software has become, by many measures, more challenging. But the focus has instead turned to humans, hacking the humans, social engineering. And that's why I bring this combination of insights, this combination of experiences together, because you've got both the digital security element and the biological expertise as well, security in the biological realm. As this decade progresses and the threats become the threats evolve, I wonder if these two sets of experiences that you have, the digital and the biological, may become even more relevant, even more useful as you start to apply those in a commercial at the moment, but who knows what other sphere.
So I think in terms of from the security point of view, as humans, actually, if you look at the sort of instances, humans is still the biggest, all this talk about technology, humans still the biggest sort of attack vector, followed by vulnerabilities. So I don't think you can take the sort of human element out of it. But my sort of rather eclectic career path, I think what that hopefully will show is ability to sort of grasp ideas, ability to sort of look at what's possible in the future and sort of, hopefully do my bit to, move toward that direction or help the industry as a whole. I think we all have practicalities aside. I think we all have a desire to do something that's greater than ourselves. And I think that's what I hope this platform would provide.
Well, as we start looking towards the future and emerging threats, again, we find ourselves examining this close relationship between the human, the biological, the human, and the digital, but this time in the shape of artificial intelligence, which I know is an area that you are very excited but very engaged in. And again, from how you describe your background, the biological and the digital and the analytical, large volumes of data and so on, it strikes me as inevitable that you should have a lot of insights around AI. And in fact, at the upcoming X Series event in London with the EDS, you'll be participating in a panel on the topics of brains and bots, the powerful alliance between humans and AI. So in summary, how do you summarize the main opportunity of Brains and Bots? I love that title. And what the main thing we need to be aware of as we look to embrace that opportunity, this closer collaboration between humans and intelligent automated devices.
Okay. Yeah, I am so excited about the panel, and if effectively share with the community, um, in terms of the potential going forward. I think humans are, we're creative. I know, you've got generative AI, which is producing creative content, as it were. But I think we still have an edge over the machines in terms of, our future direction. What do we need to do? What issues do we need to address, as a population, as humanity? Computers, fantastic number crunchers, but they need direction, right? So when in my past careers, we did, so for machine learning, we did supervised and unsupervised learning. Supervised, let's take it as sort of providing direction.
Yeah.
With direction, I think providing that direction is far more superior than just say, go out and find something. It's going to find something, but is it of any use? So I think humans can be sort of the orchestrator. I don't think AI is sort of in a position to, take over that role at any time in the near future. But we can be the orchestrator, the director, and then let the machine to do what it's good at, which is number crunching, which is running through scenarios to achieve a set target. So I think that's how we can work together and, advance the field in security, in healthcare, whatever.
Yeah.
It's applicable to all fields, to be honest.
Yeah. And I guess in 2025, and just as we thought that with this generative AI wave that we've been on for the last 3 years, let's say, since ChatGPT, OpenAI did its thing and all the things that rippled off the back of that, I think some of us might have been expecting 2025 to be not necessarily a year of more turbulence, but to be a year where things settle down and we work out how we can get value from this. And it's a year of broader adoption. But as we're recording, even over the last few days, whether it's DeepSeek, whether it is OpenAI, an operator, it's agentic thing going a little bit more kind of mainstream, and lots of conversations now about that embodied AI robotics and some of the companies that are beginning to emerge from different parts of the world. I have a hunch that 2025 is not going to be that settler of a year. There's going to be a lot more excitement, if you want to put it that way, to look ahead to. But listen, we'll have to leave that train of thought for now anyway there, but we will pick up on it again, Wendy, in person at that X Series event in London, and that's on Wednesday the 12th of February. Finally, though, there are some quick fire questions that we ask to all of our guests here on CXO Secrets. I'm going to have to ask you them before we let you go. Firstly, clues in the title of the show. What is your secrets? If you were to put your modesty aside, what would you say, or what would others say perhaps is your key attribute, your key learning, your key thing that's helped you to get to and do what you do today?
I think my key, my probably persistence. I think I'm very persistent in, if I put my mind to something, I'm quite persistent with trying to follow it through. I always been very curious about things. I'm always curious to learn about things, whether it's topic, not every topic, I'm ashamed to say, but as a general, especially from technology side point of view, I'm very curious. I'm a bit of a restless person. So it helps in security because there's always something going on, right? And I think I purposefully chose that field because there's, it's such an active field. So I think those three things probably help, with my success. Intelligence, I'm pretty sure I'm average intelligence. So yeah, it is those three items which sort of like got me to where I am today.
Curiosity is the one that I would absolutely pick out from those, and having that kind of active curiosity and the energy to go out and do something. You can be curious, but not actually go ahead and ask the questions. But if you are curious and you go and ask the questions and you keep asking why 5 times, however many times, I think that attribute alone will get you a long way in life. We do a pass the question here on the show too, where each guest asks a question to the next episode's guest, whoever they may be. And in our last episode, Anaïs Beaucazin, who is a CBSO at ADP International, she asked this question.
What's your biggest challenges as a CXO, and how do you deal with it? What are your tips for being successful with it?
So I think the biggest challenge for most leaders in security is the volume of activities and the volume of potential issues that you're presented with. There's a concept in machine learning called principal component analysis. It's basically, looking at finding components with the biggest effect. So my role is essentially, how do you filter the information that you're given and do activities that brings the biggest gain for the organization. No organization can be 100% secure. It's sort of like, how do you balance that risk, and how do you sort of do sufficient analysis on your issues, present it in such a way that you are able to, security is not free, unless you're a security, products company. We are a cost center, right? How do you go to the exco and say, we need to address these issues? This is what the analysis showed, and this is the funding we required, especially in the current climate. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for most security leaders and professionals, is how to prioritize.
Filtering and prioritization. And then once you have worked out what you need to address in which order, then it's going to your executive committee, whatever you call them, where you work, and being able to tell a story, being able to create a convincing argument, a convincing proposal that gets them to see what you see in order for you then to mitigate that risk, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And doing it in a succinct way. I think, we're passionate, we're security professionals, we're passionate about security, but the board, they have 1,000 other things that they need to deal with. So it's how to go into them, literally 5 minutes, a succinct message. What can we do? How can we do it? How can you support us?
Finally, Wendy, do you have a question that you would like to pose to our next guest, whoever they may be?
Okay, so I would like to ask the next guest, how are they preparing their organization for these very pivotal changes coming with AI automation, specifically, applying this into their organizations?
Good question. Look forward to hearing the answer to that. I'll be sure to put that question to the guest at the top of season 2 of CXO Secrets. But for now, here at the end of season 1 of CXO Secrets, Wendy Ng, thank you very much indeed for taking time out to join us.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. And thank you for allowing me to be your final session.